Okay. And then how did you get into sync licensing and making movies for TVs? Because that is a industry that a lot of people would like to get into. Um, and how did you break into that industry?
So let's see. I've always wanted to do like score film and stuff. But I don't read music. I don't play much more than guitar. I can play a little piano. And so, you know, I think it was, there's a movie called Wild Things, Nev Campbell, and, who was the guy that was in it? Gosh, I'm seeing his face. I'm blanking on his name. Anyway, they had me come in and play guitar to picture in a studio, and they just wanted surf guitar, which is kind of what I'm known for. And so I'm just playing this stuff, and they're like, "Great!" And I'm like, "They're never going to use that, right?" And then the movie comes out, and I'm all over it, and I'm like, "What?" And I was hooked. I'm like, I want to do this. That was super fun, and I love hearing something that I did to picture, you know. And so I got hooked on it, and I just kind of started throwing it out there, you know, for people to know that I did that, and I was promoting that. I did a few commercials here and there that you wouldn't know about because it doesn't. You don't see credits in commercials, but it'd do like Canon commercial and did some things like that, and then you just kind of get your name tossed around Hollywood or LA or in that community, and then people start giving you little things here and there. Um, Someone approached me and said, "Hey, I want you to score an entire film," and I'm like, "Well, depends on what you want. You know, it's like if you're looking for Hans Zimmer, he's over there. You know, I don't do that." They're like, "No, we want it. We want whatever you do." And so I was able to score a film called oh my gosh, I am so bad right now. uh, Something in the valley. You'll have to look um at my IMDb. But from that, you know, a bunch of other things started happening. I got a new publishing deal, and that came with the music supervisor Tracy McKnight, who would just give me all kinds of work. And I think the other thing is, you know, by um, All Star being in Shrek and lots of movies, actually, lots of TV, lots of commercials, you know, a lot of people were just kind of like, well, who did that? You know, and then they find me. And so, and that's just kind of how I get my work.
Yeah, as a millennial, you guys were all over the place. I remember you guys were in Digimon the movie and Shrek, and yeah, I think you guys were in Kim Possible too. I remember you guys were in an episode of Kim Possible. Um, when did you realize the power of syncing film with music?
I mean, when I was a kid, you know, it's like, I mean, one of the things I loved about TV shows were the themes. You know, I loved Hawaii Five O, and I remember like watching Taxi and going, this is a comedy. Why is that song so sad? Like every time that song came on as a child, I would cry. I'm like, that's just driving me crazy, you know? Sorry, I'm like, I need to find this movie, Valley of the Sun. And it's hilarious. Check out the film. It's about a retired porn star who goes crazy and ends up living with his parents in a retirement community, and he's delusional. And so he thinks that all these old people are like having S&M parties, and it's crazy. And so, yeah, anyway, that was my
Yeah.
first fully.
That's awesome.
But all right, what were we talking about?
We were talking about the power of film and music together. You were talking about Hawaii Five O and how the theme from Taxi made you cry.
Yeah. So there's a movie called Harry's Game. It's an Irish film, and the artist Clannad had the theme throughout that movie, and all the music in that film is just like it just makes you feel like you're in a rainy day in Ireland, you know. And I just remember going, this music is if you turn it off, if you mute your television, it's not the same. And so I realized how important that was. And I really wanted to be a part of it. I didn't know how I was going to be a part of it. And so when Smash Mouth came along, and all of a sudden they started syncing us our songs in television and commercials and film. I was like, okay, it's on. We're going to do this, you know.
How did was that something from the outset of, like, was that something y'all's management pushed, was trying to get into movies, or was that something that happened organically? Because it was kind of like, it seems crazy now, but like at that time, sync was kind of looked down upon for
Mm-hmm.
artists. Like, it was, it was very I remember specifically, there was an incident with Iggy Pop where Iggy Pop licensed a song to a Ford commercial, and a lot of people were like, oh, I can't believe Iggy Pop would sell out like that. And it's like, no, it's Iggy Pop. He needs money too, just like the rest of us.
Right.
Um, and so it's crazy because now everyone syncs everything, and that's like a first line of income for a lot of people.
Yeah.
Um,
I mean,
was
you seem much younger than me, but you know, when in the '90s, if you had a song in a commercial, that was like anti everything. You know, you were not punk rock. You were not, you were a sellout, whatever. And yeah, when we were first approached, they were calling our manager, and our manager was telling us, and I was the one that was kicking and screaming about it. Believe it or not, I was the one that didn't want to do it. And I was like,
Why
no,
not? Why not?
I didn't want to, if our band had any credibility at that point, I mean, after a while we did not have any credibility, but at that point, we were a punk rock band, we were from San Jose, California. We were from a scene, and what were our fellow scenesters going to think about us? And I was very worried about credibility and what we looked like doing that, and I think that Shrek was the first biggie. That was the first big thing. I had done Wild Things before that, though. I had done the score stuff before that, and I wanted to keep it separate. I didn't want the band to be part of it. I wanted to do it myself, and it wasn't uh, I wasn't being selfish. I wasn't trying to hoard money or anything like that. I was trying to protect our brand and our band and everybody in it. It was what I thought I was trying to do. Whether that was right or wrong, probably not right. And so some things were probably passed up and turned down. But when Shrek came along, I was still like, no way. We are not a Disney band. We are not, there's no way, we're not a family band. We swear, we drink, we smoke, we're bad guys. I'm not going to do this. And, it was a democratic situation. I'm sure, I'm sure I was sort of outvoted, and I'm so glad I was, because that is the gift that keeps on giving.
Was it one of those things where you got the check and you were like, oh, they were right?
I don't know if it was a money. I don't know back then. I don't know if it was a money thing. I think that it was more like, I just didn't want to sell out. But soon after that, I mean, we would turn things down. Like, there are certain companies that I don't really want to endorse, and I won't talk about here, but, that came to us and just said, here's a lot of money. We want to use your song for a cigarette thing. You're like, no, just things like that.
Okay. And then, what can artists do to make their music appeal more to film and television, do you think?
To me, it just comes down to the honesty thing. I mean, if you're hired to do something or commissioned to do something, you know what you're doing. Your music needs to evoke emotion. It's like, if you're a singer songwriter, that it seems to be very syncable these days. It's really it's simple. Just make sure your music is honest. It's coming from your heart, and it's like, and what you're talking about. It's believable, I guess.
Is there anything more, like I guess less philosophical? Like, is there anything as from a business standpoint or from a compositional standpoint that would make it more attractive? Like, I mean, I get what you're saying with the honesty thing, and I 100% agree, but it does seem a little vague.
Yeah. Um, I mean, if you wanted to research what's happening, if there's trends and things like that, and you want to jump on that, if you wanted to say, okay, I remember a few years ago, everybody was snapping in their production. There were lots of snaps going on. It was all snaps instead of a snare drum on the backbeat. If you wanted to follow like some sort of trend like that, in your production, I guess that would be a way to go. If you want to make sure your drum sounds are up to date, you're not using a kick or snare drum that was used last year. There's like production things like that, I guess. I do remember playing something for my brother and him criticizing the sounds of the drums, like going, "Oh man, that's a played out thing." You know, I mean, I can't really think of anything in particular that any sort of advice that I could give, except for things like that. Make it sound great.
And then, as far as your sync, I've talked to a few sync composers on this podcast. Um, do you build sync libraries for different sounds, or do you get commissioned for everything, or how does it work for you, your sync process?
I don't normally do a sync library, but there is something that I'm working on right now for a show that's coming out next year that's looking for a specific era and a specific sort of thing. And so I am building an instrumental library that will have vocalists on it. Someday it's going to have different vocalists. Kind of the way Slash did his thing, where, it's Slash. It's definitely Slash when you hear it. So when you hear this stuff, it's, if you know what I sound like, you'll know that it's my guitar playing, I guess, or my production, but the singers will be different on it.
And then, what advice would you have for other people trying to break into sync licensing? Because it is a very profitable field right now. It's also a very hyped field. I feel like a lot of people in music, like I said, it's a lot of people are using that to try to make money off music. It's one of the last kind of refuges for decent sized checks in the music industry. What advice would you have for some people trying to break into sync?
Oh, wow. I guess, unfortunately it's like who sort of thing, because everybody has, GarageBand and Logic, and some people have, other DAW stuff, Pro Tools and things like that. Everybody has it. Anyone can make music anytime, anywhere on your iPhone. Your competition is stiff as hell these days. And so you have to stand out somehow, and you have to meet some people, You got to get out there and meet people, whether it's in social media situation or if it's like, face to face at a, BMI cocktail party, whatever. Get out there and just try to meet people. I will say one thing about going back to your library, like having libraries. I do have friends that, work for companies like Cobalt and these companies that do a lot of like heavy sync stuff. They go to, they create these libraries. Some of them they'll make a fake band. Here, my band's called Spindrift. And, here's the kind of music we do. We are like psychobilly metal with a classical edge, and then, so if someone's looking for that, they can Google that, or they can put that in. There's also a platform or a thing called Disco, and you can put all your music in there, and it'll have different descriptions. Like this is at 122 BPM. It's in the key of D flat. It's got distorted guitars on it and a harp. Uh, and people can like go in there and click in those descriptions and immediately find something that you made, and that's a very good uh, way to get your music into film or TV.
And then you said that obviously it's a lot of times it's who you know, and you mentioned a few things, but I wondering if you could go a little bit further. How do you meet the people you need to know in sync?
So if you can get yourself a publisher who, at a publishing company that also has a licensed sync department, is your best way to do it. And most of them do have that. So if you can, go to Cobalt or Songs or one of those companies and get your music published by them, you will automatically have a sync department and hopefully a music supervisor that'll take you under their wing.